There have been so many stories and legends being told on the island of Sodor. Most of them were brought up whenever long periods of fog and mist came, and the engines would bring up these supernatural tales. There was one story in particular that had recently been brought up, one that gave children nightmares in the worst way. Once upon a time, there was an engine who used to work on Sodor, long before Thomas came in 1915. The story went something like this. Early one night, there was a steam engine waiting at the docks to take his passengers home. He had a similar shape like Thomas, with 6 small wheels, except he was painted silver and had the number 0 on his side. His name was Timothy. He was an old but kind engine, with a broad smile and wrinkles at the end of his mouth. All the passengers climbed on board the coaches, and the guard blew his whistle. "All steam ahead, Timothy."
Sure thing.
Timothy was soon puffing down the line in the countryside, with the rails humming and the carriages clattering behind him. The moon was full, the signals were down, and the wind was blowing gracefully. As they approached the first station, it happened. The driver applied the brakes, but Timothy kept on going and shot past the station. He started to go faster and faster.
"Timothy, what are you doing?"
Timothy didn't answer. He just kept on going. Suddenly, they were switched off the wrong line, heading away from the main line. Then the driver and fireman saw in horror that they were heading towards a cliff where a viaduct was to be built.
"Timothy, don't! You will kill us all!"
The driver and fireman scrambled and fiddled with the controls, desperately trying their best to stop him, but it was no use.
"I will send you all to the graveyard!"
The train had crashed through the blockade and had fallen into the ravine below, killing everyone on board. Timothy and his crew were also killed upon impact. There was no eyewitnesses and no survivors. The wreck was found by the workmen the following day, but they couldn't identify who the engine was due to being blown up and charred beyond recognition. When investigators came, they had very little evidence to go on, but the bodies of the driver and fireman were found, and they thought they had tried to save the locomotive and the passengers, but couldn't in time. Investigators ruled it as a normal tragic train accident with mechanical failure to the controls as the cause of the crash. Years later, the construction of the viaduct was commenced. However, after the rails were laid and the final works to it were being made, many workmen and railway staff reported seeing a ghost train rushing by, whistling fit to burst and cursing in a demonic voice before screaming into the darkness and disappearing. Many witnesses didn't know that it was the ghost of Timothy haunting the viaduct, but nobody really knew whether to believe it or not. But it was, according to those who had heard about the story. And every year, on the date of his suicidal accident, Timothy runs again as a warning to others, plunging into the gap, shrieking like a lost soul. The legend of Timothy's untold story was so dark that if any children were told about it by mishap, they would get nightmares and scream out at night. But the story was never revealed to the Fat Controller's engines until now. One foggy evening, Percy was returning home after a hard day's work at the docks. He was tired and in need of a long rest. He was travelling along a route which he knew of. It was a shortcut to get home. Percy knew where he was, even in the dark.
It should be long now, for I'm nearing Crow's Farm Crossing.
Crow's Farm Crossing was located near Heckenbeek, which was a small hamlet serving as a halt on Thomas's branch line. As Percy continued his run, the rails hummed and the signal lights shone green. Then he heard a whistle that was not familiar to him, followed by a voice echoing in the darkness. Children, children. Percy was confused. He slowed down and whistled back.
Hello? Is anyone there?
I like children. I like children. Percy was getting more confused. As he was about to cross Crow's Farm Crossing, he and his crew both gasped in horror as another engine shot out from the fog. Percy wailed out, whistling long and loud as he closed his eyes, expecting a crash. But then silence quickly fell. Cautiously, Percy opened one of his eyes as his driver and fireman looked out from opposite sides from the cab. No one was there.
What in Satan's name was that?
It looked like an engine, but that was no kind of engine, but it looked enough.
That was a ghost train. It's not like the one that we were told about, but that was so realistic and terrifying.
Then the driver paused. He began to remember something from long ago.
Percy, remember the time I told you about the ghost story about the one that I saw the night before and was to be a pretend ghost on television? I'm just beginning to think that possibly. No, I'm not kidding here. I believe that now it was not a fake story at all. It was real. I was wrong. The ghost train was real!
Percy's wheels shivered at the thought if his driver was believing the story that he had told him. But even he was starting to have second doubts about it. And he was still thinking about it when he made it back to the sheds. But just who was the mysterious and horrifying ghost engine that he and his crew saw? The next morning, Percy was still feeling shocked from last night. All day he kept on thinking about who the ghost train was, and whether or not his driver's story was really true or still made up. The little green engine could remember the time years ago he was told about it, and then telling about it to Thomas and Toby. Thomas didn't believe it, and later got a fright from Percy after his accident with a cart of lime. It all seemed like yesterday, but both Thomas and Percy had not forgotten about it. At the sheds, Thomas and Toby were being looked at by engineers. Outside, the weather had changed. The mist had come down, and it was crawling along the rails. At that moment, Percy puffed in after delivering the mail train. But Thomas could see that his friend was not looking his normal self.
Percy, are you okay?
Thomas, you might find this crazy, but it's hard to believe, but I saw a ghost train. It's not like any other. It's so scary and very demonic, as if it came from the underworld. And when I saw it, it was coming straight at me, and by the time I opened my eyes, it was gone.
That's some story. And most of all over the top. A ghost train that looks demonic? That's mostly something you'd see out of a horror movie.
Did you get a good view of it? What did he look like?
I couldn't tell, it was happening so fast.
Surely your mind was only playing a trick on you. Or perhaps you're remembering about the event years ago when you pulled off that ghost prank on me when you were pretending to be the ghost train from that made-up story your driver told you.
That's just it, Thomas. Remember when my driver told me about that story? He now thinks that it's real, and the ghost train does indeed exist.
Wait. This was all made up, and now years later, your driver's changing it to thinking it's real. Come on, Per. See, ghost stories are there for a reason. They're there to give us a scare, and not like in scaring us to death or something.
You can all go on about this, but that ghost train story that I told Percy a long time ago seems to come back and haunt me.
What do you mean?
The story that I told was for real. When I was looking through the documents of past accidents and incidents, I stumbled across one that had not been looked at in a very long time. The record showed about an engine who had a tragic crash and left behind a haunting story that was only have been recently told. The event happened a long time ago, way before Thomas, Percy, and Toby came to the railway. The train was taking passengers home when, according to the reports from the investigators, its brakes failed and the engine continued on going and going until it ran off a cliff, which was where the viaduct was built many years later. The engine crashed, killing everyone. But as the decades went by, witnesses claimed to have seen a ghost train running along the anniversary of its accident. Even I saw it, but I got a better look and saw its face. The engine had a very cold presence, one that I never felt before. He had an evil and demonic look that only the devil himself could describe. The engine had a number 0 on his side with 6 small wheels and was painted silver.
An engine with 6 wheels, painted silver, and the number 0. Who was he?
The engine's overall appearance was just like you, Thomas. And his name was Timothy. Why, bless my bell!
So the ghost train that I saw was him!
It seems to be, now that I remember it. It fitted the story of how it came together.
Timothy was an engine who looked like me? But I never saw him or ever met him before. How is this even possible that he can resemble me?
No one replied. The shed had gone quiet. Thomas was still in a state of shock. Toby was confused, and Percy was left with so many questions flying around in his smoke box. The truth in finding out who the ghost train was had been told at last. Thomas was still feeling let down about how he failed to get to Timothy. Hours later, while at the docks, he explained all this to Gordon, who was preparing to take the evening express. Gordon did not believe any part of the story one bit, and thought that the little blue tank engine was out of his mind, and that he only saw something out of his imagination.
A ghost train? It almost looks like you? With a demonic face like the devil? Paw! What nonsense! Why, this story sounds like another pile of rubbish that only little kids will be afraid of.
Thomas once again tried to tell Gordon that this was all real and not fake, but the big blue engine was having none of it.
Oh, you silly little tank engine! All this is just fiction! Why? If I really saw a ghost, I just simply stand up to it and scare it away! Even if all this Timothy, or whatever nonsense, or whatever you call him, would scare the likes of me? Paw! Just remember, little Thomas, I'm an important engine, and I don't have time for made-up stories that things will go bump in the night. Good night!
Thomas watched without saying a word as Gordon, in his boastful style, puffed away into the night. Gordon was making excellent timing, with the night being clear and the signals shining green.
These ghost stories. Puh! Thomas must be too puffed up in his smoke box. There's no such thing as ghost.
As he neared the viaduct, his driver saw the signal ahead, and it was red. Gordon was not pleased and confused by this as he came to a stop.
I don't understand it. I'm the only engine on the line at this time of night, and Henry is not due with the Flying Kipper until morning.
But he was wrong. A blanket of fog suddenly came down, followed seconds later by a deep whistle he had never heard before.
Huh? What's that over there? It looks like a... Oh my God! No! No! It can't be!
So you two have heard about my past. Everyone knows it, yet they fail to understand it. I'm here to tell you this. If you see Thomas, tell him that his time on this railway is coming to an end, and that he will never be seen again. And if you don't, you'll be among many of my next victims that I will take straight to hell.
No, please, I don't want, I'm too young to be scrubbed. No, I don't want to go to hell. Wait, I must be dreaming. Oh, this the one you, oh, stop, let's get out of here.
As soon as it happened, the fog lifted. But Gordon was horrified and scared almost to death. The signal changed to green, and he was on his way again. Gordon remained silent for the rest of the night, knowing that he had just had an encounter with Timothy, the ghost train of Sodor. The next day, things on the branch line ran as normal. Thomas, Toby and Daisy took passengers, while Percy was shunting in the yard. The branch line was getting more busier as the week went on, as the summer season progressed. Thomas soon had to do some yard shunting while Percy took over in pulling his coaches. Toby and Percy were sent to take some stone trucks from the quarry down to Wellsworth, where Edward was to take it to the docks. As they watched the train depart, the subject on Timothy began to play on their minds again. Thomas, on the other hand, continued on taking passenger services and workmen to locations that needed repairing. By the time the week had gone, the engines were totally exhausted. Some days later, Percy was making his way back home. He followed the same shortcut, passing Crow's Farms crossing and going through green signals. Just then he saw Toby in a siding by a signal box and came to a stop.
Hey Toby, what are you doing out here at this time of evening?
I've been here for hours. The points are jammed, so I can't go anywhere. My driver's calling for help, and a group of workmen are coming to mend the failed points.
The old tram engine suddenly noticed that the mist was rolling in quite faster than usual. The moonlight's bright light from above was starting to become blocked.
My word, what unpleasant weather this is.
Suddenly, he and Percy heard a whistle from another engine, which was coming from the darkness ahead of them. It was then heard again, followed by an echoing voice. Children! Children!
Bless my bell. It can't be.
I like children. I like children.
Then they saw the shape of an engine silhouetting in the mist. They couldn't see the mysterious engine's face, but it was certain that it was the evil spirit of Timothy.
My reign of horror will never end. My wrath will be felt. And one by one, all of you will be sent to your graves. And then he will be mine and will join me in hell.
Timothy shot forward, shrieking out loudly. Percy and Toby quickly caught a glimpse of his sadistic face. They shut their eyes as they anticipated a crash. Total silence fell. Percy opened his eyes first, then Toby. They looked around, but no one was there. Timothy had vanished.
So, that was Timothy.
Yes, Toby, it was.
News of the encounter of Timothy's ghost soon spread down the line. But Percy and Toby were not the only ones who had caught sight of him. During the weekend, witnesses who were waiting for Thomas's evening train claimed to have seen Timothy, mostly scaring them and their children, as well as station staff and workmen. Something was happening, and it seemed that less and less people were starting to come onto the branch line and take the main line instead. Rumours began to spread, until one day, Toby was told about the rumour. Later that evening, the old tram engine explained all this to Percy.
Looks like your driver was right about the story of Timothy. The branch line has lost many visitors. It looks like Timothy's ghost has been scaring them away. The driver says he comes running through the darkness as a warning to others. But what's with the warning? Who is he after, and what's his purpose in haunting our line? Oh, that makes me shudder to think of it.
Oh my goodness! If the story that my driver's mentioned is true, then all this time we've been running the branch line that has been haunted after all this time with an evil ghost we've never heard of.
Fine rain fell, with a slight hear of thunder and lightning. For the rest of the night, it rained, and it would continue to do so for a couple of days. However, Thomas began to think about the story of Timothy, for it had been playing on his mind for some time. The little blue engine was now lost with questions he wanted answering, but there was a part of him that made him not to believe in all this.
I was once told about it, but I never believed it. I thought it was some made-up tale to play in our minds. However, we were wrong.
So the story really is true?
I can't be sure, but if this ghost story is, and that this incident about our engine who had a similar appearance like you then
what? Are you trying to say that Timothy is somehow related to me?
For the rest of the afternoon, Thomas quietly worked and said nothing to anyone. The thought of thinking that Timothy was a more darker form of himself soon overwhelmed him, until it made him ill. Edward took him to the works to be looked at, while Toby and Percy did most of the works alone. Several weeks had passed, and there seemed to be no more signs of Timothy's evil spirit. But as the old saying goes, this was just the calm before the storm.
The future generations that live on this island don't even know who I am or know of my existence. If those who do remember me have either chosen or forgotten, or even refuse to even remember me, I'll force them to.
At Crosby Station, James was taking a short mixed freight. He could not leave until Edward had arrived with his passenger train, who was running 25 minutes late. James was getting impatient and wanted to leave.
Where's Edward? He's supposed to be here on time, and now he's holding me up for the last 25 minutes.
Another 2 minutes passed before finally Edward arrived.
Late once again!
Oh, come off it, James. I got held up back there at the viaduct after a group of witnesses stopped us, reporting that they had saw something unusual and that it was on the same track as me.
Stuff and nonsense! Your so-called hold-up has made me late for almost half an hour! Now if you'll excuse me, I must be off.
And with that, James puffed crossly away with his train. James was trying to make up for the time he had lost. He was still feeling very bad-tempered. He arrived near Brendan's warehouse just outside Knapford's yards, where he had to shunt his train into a siding. The sun was almost completed setting, and James had to get some water for he had run low on it.
This won't take too long, I hope. I don't want to miss my favorite football game.
You can say that again.
However, the lever would not allow the water to come out, no matter how much the driver tried.
That's weird. Hey chap, let's go and see if there's a mechanic around here to give us a helping hand.
Sure thing. James, we'll be back in a moment before you know it.
Oh great! More hold-ups!
As the red engine waited, it started to rain lightly, but less than 6 minutes later, it poured down.
Just my luck! If Henry was here, he'd be complaining and wanting to hide in the tunnel again!
Just then, the air grew colder. James felt the drop in temperature, but then he started to hear someone or something nearby in the sidings.
Children.
Is someone there? Hello?
I like children. I like children.
Hey, cut it out! Whoever's in there, show yourself! I'm in no mood for fun and games!
Don't you see it? The time is near. The moment is closing in. The end is almost upon us.
James suddenly started to feel tense when he heard that voice. Then he saw an engine appearing from behind a long line of vans.
Oh my god! No way!
Can't you feel it? The pain, hatred, depression, and suffering. Don't you feel it? No, you don't. You can't understand it. Thomas tried to save me, yet he failed in doing so. Pass this on to him. His demise will come. Once he's gone, I'll get my vengeance. If you don't, you'll suffer your own demise by me.
It's the ghost train! He does exist! He's gonna get me! Help! Help!
James was so terrified that he refused to open his eyes. But he did though, when he saw that Timothy was no longer there, as did the rain and the cold temperature that had gone away at the same time. He looked around, shivering to make sure that nothing else was there, remaining ever so silent, even when his crew had returned. This was one night that James would never want to remember.